Hello, this time on Muy Criollo we'll be talking about a staple of Ecuadorian cooking, mote. Mote is a hard dish to describe in English. It's boiled hominy, which is a kind of starchy corn popular in South America, served alone or mixed with various flavorings. It's a very hearty and filling food seen in highland cooking, especially in Cuenca, usually paired with pork. While it's pretty common to eat it plain, the two versions of mote I'll be sharing today are Mote Pillo, where you add eggs, and Mote Sucio, where gravy and meat are added. Since today's focus is a side dish, I'll also be making some pork recipes to go along with it. Now the star ingredient here is the mote, which in the US is virtually always dried. Or canned, but please don't use that stuff, it's awful. Mote does require a bit of attention since it has to soak overnight and then takes several hours to cook. But it's not a lot of work really, you just need to make sure you start early enough. It's nighttime right now, and I'm just going to soak this in water so I can cook it in the morning. Now I'm also going to prepare our pork. That means making a marinade. For this marinade, I'm going with a simpler version of a pernil marinade. I'm going to puree red onion and orange juice together with some salt and cumin. Now pour that on the pork. I have a nice piece of pork shoulder here. Just pour that on and we'll come back to it in the morning. Now it's the next day and our pernil is going in a 325-degree oven for at least 6 hours. Our mote has been at a simmer all morning as well. In salted water, by the way. It's been about 4 to 5 hours. It's not an exact timing. You'll know it's ready when most of the kernels have burst open like this. If in doubt, cooking it longer is better. I let it continue for an hour after they had already mostly burst, just to make sure they were fully tender. Strain the mote and put it aside. Meanwhile, we'll chop some green onions. You can use scallions or even white onions, but these are in season right now, so I grabbed them. I'm going to cut the whites separately. Next, we're going to mince some garlic. Set that aside, and chop some cilantro. I'm making a double batch today. Each individual recipe will only require about half the ingredients. Measurements are in the description below. We'll start with the Mote Pillo. Pour Achiote Oil in a pot, or regular vegetable oil if you don't have it, and sweat some garlic and the greens of the onions. Season with a little salt, and then we'll add the mote. Mix it all up together thoroughly. Make sure you're muted and your video is off on your Zoom call so your professor and your classmates don't realize what you're doing. Then we'll add the eggs, which have been beaten with a 1/4 cup of milk. Stir the mote until the eggs are cooked, and season as necessary, but make sure you don't cook it too much or the eggs will dry out. Good scrambled eggs should still be moist, and the same rule applies here. I actually turn off the heat and let the residual heat handle the rest while I finish it off with lots of cilantro. This is great, but since it's a side dish, we'll need something to serve with it. The pernil is still roasting, so I'll saute a simple pork chop to go with the mote pillo. Throw some butter in the pan for deeper flavor. Press down on the edges after you flip it to get an even sear. And finally, when it's almost ready, turn it on its end and sear the fat too. This is a step a lot of people skip, and the flavor difference is huge. Let's assemble our plate. First, a generous helping of Mote Pillo, topped with our thick pork chop, and to offset these hearty flavors, just a basic tomato, onion, cilantro salad, using the same marinated onions from my video on encebollado, which you can check out here. Now that's one delicious meal, but what about the other mote, and what about the pernil? Well, our pork has been in the oven for hours, but I haven't been neglecting it. Every few hours I've taken it out and basted it with the onion marinade. When the marinade dried up, I added water to the pan and continued basting. It might look like sludge, but don't let that marinade burn. We'll need it for the mote. Finally, I make sure the pernil is fully cooked. Really just a formality at this point because look at it. But it's always better to play it safe and double check. I could have let it roast for even longer and become even more tender, but I was running short on time myself, so once it hit 150 degrees, out it came. Now, after it's rested for about 15 minutes, I'll carve up some of the meat for our mote and chop it up. You can shred the pork instead if you want. I'm starting the Mote Sucio in the same way, sweating the green onions and garlic in Achiote Oil, if you have it. But this time I'm adding the whites of the onion, and when I season it, I'm using salt, pepper, and cumin. After sweating our aromatics, it's time to add the mote. Stir that together a bit, and add the pork and the pork drippings. Let me just say I'm using the flavorful onion drippings from the pernil, but you can use any drippings or gravy, or any style of roast pork for this dish. Once the pork and the drippings have been mixed in fully, add more salt if necessary, and top it off with lots of cilantro. Now it's time for plate number 2. Down goes our Mote Sucio, and make sure to keep up participating in your online classes. Okay, after establishing that yes, you are indeed paying attention to the class, lay down the pernil and a spoonful of that refreshing tomato salad. Boom. A filling and delicious dinner you can have now or after class. Probably after class. And there you have it. 2 recipes for mote along with 2 ways of cooking pork to go with it. Of course, usually the pork would be the star here, but I really wanted to focus on this side dish so that it gets the attention and love it deserves too, and hopefully it will find a place on your tables as well. Accompanied by pork or by itself. Mote really seems like the answer mountainous regions have to coastal favorites like dirty rice and fried rice and other mixed rice dishes. They're pretty similar recipes. I hardly ever get tired of rice myself, but if you're ever craving something a little different, and you have the time to give it a go, I promise you won't be disappointed. On another note, some of you may have noticed that this video wasn't released at the usual time. And that's because, given the intensity of school, I've decided to change my upload schedule to every 2 weeks. I want to continue to produce quality videos, so this seemed like a necessary change, even over the summer. This will give me more time to focus on improving the overall quality of my uploads as well, so thank you all for bearing with me. Well, that's all for tonight. Have a great day, and I'll see you all on the next one.